Mhm. Okay. Good evening. How you doing? Hey, what's happening? I'm just grabbing a couple websites here. Hey, how's it going? Nice to see everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. Okay. Good evening. You know, everyone's got a live right now. Eric Warsaw has a live going on. SoCal Smitty has a live going on. I feel badly going on at the same time. We should probably pick different time slots so we're not overlapping each other. I'm doing okay, Sarah. How are you doing? Hey, Tia. Thanks again for your support. I felt lousy a couple days ago, but I feel a little better today and yesterday. Thank you. Oh, yeah, by the way, do me a favor. I know this is a pain in the ass, but can you tap on me? Just keep tapping for the likes because unfortunately they're limiting the reach of my lives right now. I don't know why, but that'll help get more people notified. So thank you. I can invite my friends to go live. Okay. Hey, where you live? I don't know. Hey, why ask? No. I'm on the east coast of the United States, mid-Atlantic region. Hello, it's me, Roxanne. How you doing? Good to see you. Good evening, everybody. Nice to have you here. Thank you for being with me on this Wednesday night. It's always an interesting ride, right? We get into all sorts of fun topics. I got into a pretty heated debate last night. I don't know if anybody caught it. I don't know if it was on SoCal's or it was on someone else's live, but it was about the political. I mean, it was silly. It was about the political process and like what the next best steps are. And this person, I mean, and I hope they're right actually, and the person was called like very tall. I don't know what it was. Some guy. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Asma. Yeah, I go live 6 days a week, so there's never a shortage of places to catch up if you want to. But what's going to be happening, just so if you don't know, so I've set up a Patreon page, and I think it's like $5 a month, and there's going to be additional tiers. Like I think one's going to be 10 and one will be 15, something like that. And I'm going to start doing more of my lives and other content over there, just for people who help out, because I'm broke, quite frankly. I mean, at least I'm not making an income. In fact, I talked to my mother today, and she's like, "So, what are you doing for money?" I'm like, "That's a great question, Mom." So, did I hear what CBN says? No, why don't you tell me, Abraham? Thank you. Who am I voting for? For those of you who don't know, okay, this is a whole other story. So typically, I don't vote in federal elections. Not because I don't think it's my civic duty. If there's a good candidate, I'll vote. But let's face it, it's all usually controlled. It's a two-party system. Most of the money flows to one and the other. So it's not like it's a big choice, right? And for president, it's a total joke. But I'm going to talk about somebody tonight who I do like, who I think, and it's not even my state, it's a different state. But when I find somebody that I think is good, I'll tell you, you know. Yeah, I don't know whose live I was on yesterday, but I've been on different lives here and there. What I do is after I finish this, I'll bounce around a little bit, or even during the day, and sometimes I'll pop up if people don't have too many people on. But most of the time, I just like to listen. I'm not retired. I've been a business guy, and I've had some savings from the last company that I did well with, but I kind of finished doing that in 2018. So it's been a while, and so my savings are, your savings start here. You're like, yeah, and then it starts to do this. I did some Uber driving the last year, which went pretty well actually. I'd never done it before, and me, I'm Mr. Tricky, so I figured out a way to do it to kind of beat the system. And they changed the way they pay because of people like me doing what I was doing. So they made it so you couldn't make any money. So I had to stop doing it. Yeah, who do I like? I mean, put it this way, I don't like anybody in terms of, who they are as people or what they stand for. I think everybody has pros and cons, right? So nothing's all good or all bad. So, but I just don't see how anybody can want to vote for Joe Biden. I mean, at least forget about his politics for a second. Let's say he was the greatest guy that ever lived in terms of his politics, which he's not. But look at him. I mean, can you imagine what he's going to look like in 4 more years? In fact, I don't even think he's going to be the nominee. I've told this before, I'll say this again. I think the nominee is probably going to be Gavin Newsom. the governor of California. Someone said they didn't see me at the protest. Yeah, that's too bad. A lot of people were trying to catch up. And unfortunately, it's interesting. I crossed paths with a lot of people who recognized me from TikTok, but not a lot of the people who said we were going to be going together, because there was communications break. There was the communications was blacked out for a bit there. It was a problem. It's always a problem when you have that many people in one place. Yeah, somebody says I can't vote for Biden or Trump. I'm right there with you. Now the question is, well, what if you don't vote for the president? Then what's going to happen? Well, usually in most states, just so you know, the way the American presidential race goes, it's not like the country votes. It's 50 different states contests. So I live in a state that's predominantly Democrat, and so if I was a Republican, which I'm not, but I couldn't change the election because there's just so many registered Democrats here that the state always goes. I mean, almost always goes with a Democrat. So that's unfortunate, but that's why Hillary Clinton in 2016, she lost the electoral vote, which is the state-by-state contest, but she won more total votes than Donald Trump. She had like 3 million more votes than Trump did. But that's not how the game works. It's not a total vote. It's not what they call the popular vote. It's electoral, which is state by state. And the weird thing is, you can win a state by one vote, total vote. It's not what they call the popular vote. It's electoral, which is state by state. And the weird thing is, you can win a state by one vote, and there are a few states that are like in the middle, and they're not really sure which way. Those are called swing states. And so in the election, most of the campaigning gets done in those key states, because if you can win those states even by a little bit, you can carry the election. So it's a strange system, right? But that's America, right? America's a strange place. Some of the comments in this live were filtered to protect the community's experience. Oh, that's a note from TikTok. Yeah, I guess. Is anybody here moderating yet? I haven't seen anybody who moderates in here yet. If they are, I'm sorry if I missed you. Yeah, if you don't know who Gavin Newsom is, he's the governor of California. Very slick, attractive guy, total political animal, just, perfect for the part. He looks like a good-looking guy. He's tall. He just talks the talk. Let's face it, he's a slick politician, right? That's Gavin Newsom in a nutshell. And he's a straight-down-the-line Democrat, so he'll do the typical mainstream Democrat, all the neocon stuff, all the bad stuff. It's so bad. So that's why I think we're in trouble. Yeah, we're talking about Zionists. Yeah, Dawn mentions Cornel West. We'll talk about Cornel in a second. I've actually met Cornel. I like Cornel a lot, by the way. He's definitely the best person who's running, for sure, by far. Somebody says RFK Jr. is the most Zionist to ever Zionist. I like the way you put that. Yeah, all three candidates, right? Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and I'm sure if Gavin Newsom comes in, no difference, and Bobby Kennedy, all totally support Israel. So, unfortunately, no matter who gets elected, if those are the candidates, nothing is going to change on this issue, especially with a lot of other issues too. So Cornel West, if you don't know who Cornel West is, he's an African-American professor, intellectual, social, commentator, and all-around good person who has been speaking out against the power structure and the different socioeconomic pressures in society that are not so good for the average person for a long time. He used to be a professor at Princeton University, but because he was so outspoken, like in most of these places now, if you speak out against any injustice, they find a reason to kick your ass out. He got kicked out of Princeton as a professor. So he works at some other university now, I forget which one. Claudia De La Cruz. I'm not looking into Claudia. I've heard people mention her name. Let me check it out right now. Oh, by the way, just as a side note, for those of you, Claudia De La Cruz. I'm not looking into Claudia. I've heard people mention her name. Let me check it out right now. Oh, by the way, just as a side note, for those of you, all of my lives are now fully recorded and uploaded in their entirety to YouTube and Rumble. All of my lives are now fully recorded and uploaded in their entirety to YouTube and Rumble. And the way you can access them, it's very simple. In my bio, where all my videos are, beneath my name and my little description, it says there's a little link that's clickable. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. And we're going to talk about some other stuff that's in my Linktree tonight, but we'll get to that later. But if you look on that, it's just got a list of my social media sites, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, the whole thing. Everybody's got the same stuff, right? And then in the middle, there's some groups on this thing called Telegram, which is a messaging app that we've started to help people communicate. And then at the bottom are donation links. I'll talk about that stuff later. And at the very top, there's a new donation link for a cause that I'm going to talk about tonight, but I'll get into that. Let me look at Claudia De La Cruz. Thanks for mentioning. I've heard her name mentioned. I haven't looked into her. If you don't know who Marianne Williamson, she's the other Democratic candidate that's running. But I've heard good things said about Claudia De La Cruz. I have seen an article about her once before. I remember her now. I'm guessing she's she's Hispanic and she's sort of a working class woman of color. And that's good. We need people from diverse backgrounds in our government. It's way too white male dominated, right? The patriarchy, it's been around forever. It's a problem. You know, it's part of our system. What do I think would be better for the current situation, Biden or Trump? Neither. There's pros and cons of both, okay? You know, I think Biden, you know, has probably some good things. I'm still trying to find them. But for example, let me give you an example. So environmental regulation. I think the Biden administration is probably a little bit better than the Trump administration was or would be this time. What do I mean by that? You know, in terms of permitting and some sort of rules around, you know, some regulations that would make companies do certain things that wouldn't be so egregious. Trump's for total deregulation. You know, it doesn't want any limits to business. And, you know, he says our air is fine, our water is fine. Well, the water's not so fine if you run a bunch of chemicals into it, but, you know, he just says it is, and there you go. So I think the Biden administration, as far as the safety regulations, we had a big derailment in a little town in Ohio called East Palestine, where a truck with all these really volatile chemicals, you know, came off the rails. And it turned out the reason why they came off the rails was twofold. They hadn't been inspected properly, and the braking system that would have stopped the problem of the derailment were not upgraded, which the regulations were requiring until Trump came into office. And then Trump got rid of the regulations, and the parent company, Norfolk Southern, which runs the railroad, didn't have to spend that money, either on the inspectors or on the equipment. So sometimes it's nice, you know, it saves money for business. They claim that's good for the economy, but, you know, not everything needs to be just about money, right? And this is the kind of stuff that people's lives were destroyed just because a corporation wants to save, you know, $5 million a year or whatever it was. So I don't think any of them are going to be good. I think Trump, you know, maybe is a little better on the war front. He didn't start any new wars, although he's certainly not a good guy because he, under his rule, the targeted assassination of General Soleimani in Iran took place. And he also bragged about the fact that the U.S. is occupying that part of Syria and taking their oil. I mean, that's not a good guy. So none of them are good people. Samson Solution. No, I haven't looked at that. I'll look that up. I'm glad people are telling me things I don't know. This is fun. SAMSONSOLUTIN. Why do I keep because that's the only place I can keep them. I live in a very small place. I've talked about this before. I live in a very Spartan fashion. And so I don't have much room here. You know, if you want, I can put them down on the table here. Put them on the, you know, but I just stuff things where they can go. And so when I get paper towels, I get them in bulk because they're cheaper that way. And there they are. So I won't be without paper towels for a bit. Two faces of the same coin, two wings of the same bird. Let's face it. If you have studied politics for any length of time, especially in the United States, it's been going the same way for a long time. As intellectuals like Chris Hedges have said, it's been a slow motion corporate coup d'etat, where these corporations that have donated money to candidates and the rules have changed over time, they've taken over between special interests, political action committees, high net worth individuals and corporations, and of course the permanently embedded aspect of the national security state, surveillance, three-letter agencies, the media apparatus. It's running the show. It is running the show. And until that changes, not a lot of stuff's going to change for the average person because, quote unquote, they have all that power and we don't. Where am I from? I'm from the United States. I'm from the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic region, about an hour away from Washington, D.C. How do we remove AIPAC from our government? Well, it's like anything else. The AIPAC is a symptom of a bigger problem. And yes, they have a lot of power, but the reason why groups like AIPAC have power, and they're certainly not the only one, they have a big influence over this issue with Israel-Palestine. But there's all sorts of special interest groups. The real crux of the problem is the structure and what's been constitutionally enshrined. So if you don't know, when Hillary Clinton was, you know, when she was running for office, there were some lawsuits that went down about how certain groups could spend money during the campaign, and it was called Citizens United versus Clinton. That was the court case. It was appealed to the Supreme Court. And the idea is that certain groups were told they couldn't spend a certain amount of money, and they appealed it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sided with them, saying that corporations are people and that money is free speech. And so right now, in order to overcome those two really important issues, there has to be what's called a constitutional amendment. And so there's a group that Cenk Uyghur's working on, the guy from the Young Turks, who's also running as an independent. He had a thing called Fire Pack or Fox Pack or something like that. I don't know. Some group that was trying to do that. But I think what they realized is, if you don't know what that's required, in order to get a constitutional amendment, you have to get either 2/3 of the Senate and the House to vote for it, or you have to get 3/4 of the state legislatures to vote for it, which is like 38 states or something like that. So it's a very large hurdle to overcome either way. And let's face it, the very people who are benefiting from the system are controlling the people who would have to vote for the change, right? Obviously it's not going to happen, right? So somebody says my Linktree isn't working. Well, are you from outside the United States or inside the United States, Combat Ready? Because what happens is, outside the U.S., just to let you know, they've taken down the actual link, and it's written in my bio so people can at least reference it. So if you're outside the U.S., you have to actually type in the information into a browser. It's really simple. It's LINKTR.EE. They put a period in there. I don't know why they do it that way. And then it's just / my name. So link.EE / my name. If you're in America, for some reason it's a clickable link that I've also included, and then you just click on it, it'll launch that. In fact, I took some photos today. I'm going to show you this because I want to let you see what it looks like. Because I know a lot of times we've talked about it, but I'm going to walk people through it right now. So here it is right here. That's what it looks like. That's when you pull up the Linktree, that's what it looks like. So here's the beginning of it. So if you click that link button in my page, I'll show you what it is right here. Okay, I'm going to point to it right here. It says Linktree Chip Barnes, right? Or if you're outside the US, you're not going to be able to see that. That's what you'll see. So in that case, you have to actually type in your browser these letters, Linktree Chip Barnes, okay? So if you're lucky enough to have the link, you click it and then you see this. This is what comes up. And of course, at the top of the list, you see a new link that I put on here. Obviously, if you can see, it has my TikTok backup right there, which is my backup account on TikTok. And then it's got my TikTok, which we all know is this. Then it's got my Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and Rumble. And then the next page is, I'll show you that. Let's see if I can get to it. Nope, just a second. Let me get to this way. Next page is right there. There we go. So these are the Telegram groups I mentioned to you all. So you see we have one called Palestine in Focus. There's a group chat just for me if you want to talk to me about stuff or just talk about my videos or whatever. Then we have a general one called Geopolitics, which is for all sorts of other places like Ukraine and Sudan and Yemen and all the places in the world where stuff's popping off. And then, of course, here are the donation links from me individually. So I talked about the Patreon. We'll get into that later. But anyway, I just want to give you a chance to see what it looks like. And if you ever have a chance, what I would really appreciate, by the way, is if you just follow me. Just follow me elsewhere. Because as Quinn the Eskimo says, if you don't know who Quinn is, he's a famous TikToker who's in Cairo, Egypt, trying to get into Gaza and help people. He says, we have to establish connections off of these apps. Because the situation with the apps are, because of external interference, we never know when we're going to be off the app. Like I've had it happen to me 4 times, right? It's 4 times I've logged in and there's just nothing there. I'm like, what? And so I never know how long I'm going to be here, and I have no control over it. And not just me, a lot of content creators are in the same boat. And it turns out that a lot of us who are saying, stuff in favor of the Palestinian cause or being critical of the Israeli situation, for some reason we get inordinately affected on that level. So that's why I have a backup account, which is, again, at the first place in my Linktree. And then, of course, I have the other social media. So I would appreciate it if you enjoy the way I talk, if you like me, even if you don't support me financially, which is understandable. Just follow my other stuff if you don't mind, please. Whenever somebody asks me to do it, I just go and do it. It takes like 2 minutes and then you're done, right? And a lot of times they put content on other stuff that you can't get here. So I've put things on my backup account that aren't on my primary account. Even some stuff with Ruby, my dog, from the dog park, if you like dogs. And some other videos. I do different stuff that I just don't give to this channel to encourage people to go check it out. So enough said about that. Let me see if I have Evanator pictures I can put here tonight. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, I put a little email icon on my Linktree too. I had to find that. It's fun. I'm learning so much about social media. It's crazy. Yeah, I did a look about almond milk last night. I did some research about that. Supposedly almond milk is not that good for you. At least that's what this guy was saying. Is that? Yeah, there's Ruby. For those of you who don't know who Ruby is, that was us today in the snow. That's the hound dog. And she's really cool. She's a cool dog. She's in the bedroom right now, so hopefully she'll come out before it's all done. Somebody says, I love you too. I love you back. Thank you for saying that. It's very nice. Yeah, you know, I was just thinking today, I spend so much time alone. You know, I don't know. I just don't do a good job planning social stuff. And I have people that I know, but I just don't make much of an effort. So I had a girlfriend once who was great at that. Like we're going to a party on Thursday, and I go along like a champ. I just do a terrible job planning stuff, and I just get out of touch, and then I'm by myself, which is stupid, right? But I don't know. We all have our weird qualities. Here it lowers your testosterone. Are you talking about almond milk, I guess? That it lowers your testosterone? Could be. Maybe that's why I'm not going out and meeting women or something. I don't know. Even the FN cannot let merchandise to Gaza. I'm not sure what FN means. Abraham. Just so you know, there's a group that's been asking me to link their effort on my TikTok and mention it for them. So I got approached by some folks who've been following me, and they formed a group called the Women for Palestine, I believe it is. I just made a video about it. I just dropped it before I started the live. But basically what they're doing is, it's pretty straightforward. They found someone who's able to make clothing. They have a company that makes garments and stuff. And what do they call that? There's a name for that. But anyway, so bottom line is they can make stuff and not charge anything extra, just make it at their cost for the fabric and buttons and the labor, and then just take that price and then give the stuff to people of Palestine once people donate to pay for it. So I made a donation, and other people have made very generous donations, but you know, they can always use more help. And I asked them, is the stuff getting into Gaza? Is it part of the aid that is getting in? And they said yes. So that's what I have to go on, and that's what I'm going to share with you all. But I encourage people, whenever I find a cause that makes good sense, it's coming up on winter. It's winter right now, and it gets chilly at night. You know, there it's not quite as cold as where I live. You know, here it was like 20 degrees today, which is pretty bad. But there's no snow, but it does get cold. If you're somebody whose stuff just got destroyed in your building and you're homeless, you know, there's just not much out there. A lot of people are going without food, going without shelter, going without proper clothing, all that stuff, proper medical supplies, you know, the whole 9 yards. We've all been seeing it's horrible. So we're all wondering what we can do, right? And we want to make sure we make a difference, at least if we can. Well, we know we can't stop the damn problem politically. That's terrible, right? But we can try to help in the little ways. And this is, you know, it's not little, but it's, you know, for somebody, I can tell you this, I've been in the Army. I've been miserable before when I didn't have the right clothing. And when you're cold and it's raining, it's not fun. So maybe to the extent that, you know, the donation that I gave today, maybe a couple, 3 jackets will be purchased and get to some young people, right? So that's the goal. And to some women. The last thing I heard was they're making some women's undergarments so that they, you know, I tell you this, I've worn the same pair of undergarments for weeks at a time in the Army. I'm telling you, it sucks. It's disgusting. So anyway, somebody asked, what's my day job? I'm working at getting better at being an online trader. So I've been practicing. I'm pretty much slightly profitable, break even. It just takes a while to get good. So, but I don't really have a whole lot more time. I have to get good quicker. But the other thing you're not supposed to do is trade with what they call scared money, meaning that the money you trade with, you should be able to lose it and not worry about it. It's not the rent money or the mortgage money. Because otherwise you're just too nervous, you're too jittery, you're making bad decisions because of your emotions. So, I don't know, I'm kind of with scared money now because my trading account is, you know, what I'm paying my bills out of, and eventually it's going to be gone. So, but I'm trying to learn. You know, trading is amazing because it exposes all of your flaws as a person, whatever yours or mine may be. And mine is I'm afraid to pull the trigger because I don't want to lose money. And then I get out too quickly because I'm worried that I'll lose the money that I'm up if I'm in a trade. So those are things I'm trying to teach myself and force. They literally say sit on your hands. Like once you get in, literally sit on your hands until either your stop loss, which is your like danger zone, you get out so you don't get hurt too bad, or your profit target gets hit. And just don't do anything else. Just let it go. And that's hard to do emotionally. I mean, once you start to trade, you'll find this stuff out. Whatever your problems are, some people can't take a loss. They just can't take being wrong. And so it goes below their point where they're supposed to get out, and then it keeps on going, and they're like, well, I'll just wait for it to come back, and then it never does. Now they have, instead of having a $500 loss, they have a $2,000 loss or worse. Some people have blown their whole trading account on one trade or worse. So anyway, there's a lot of interesting ways to do it. There's so many different ways to trade. There's long-term investing. There's intermediate trading where you hold into something for weeks or months. There's like day trading where you hold something during the day. There's what's called scalping where you're like in and out within a minute or two. And sometimes it's like high frequency trading where you're in for a quarter of a millisecond with computers and everything in between. And there's all sorts of great traders out there. But the bottom line is there's always two sides to a trade. And you're either the chump or the champ. And one person's losing to the other person that's winning. It's a zero-sum game. Do I need a trading team? I'm always open to new information. Listen, I've tried a lot of services. My problem isn't a service. My problem is me. So what I really need is somebody to help me get over my problems. And I did contact somebody recently who said he was going to help me. So I gave him a little bit of money. Crickets. So this is the kind of shit you run into with people. And maybe he's going to get back to me at some point. I don't know. But yeah, I've watched some of Bison's live. I saw the one she did last night when she was worried about not making it through the night. If you don't know who Bison is, she's a journalist that's in southern Gaza. She's a younger woman, and she's been giving reports since the beginning of the conflict. And she did a video late yesterday where there was noises, bombs all around her, and she was worried that she's near the hospital, the Nasser hospital that's being, hit close by, whatever, by the Israelis. And so she was worried that she wouldn't survive the night. But luckily she did, thank goodness. So yeah, dusk till dawn. If you want to contact me, my email is at the bottom of that link tree. So if you want to connect with me, listen, I'm a veteran. I don't have a ton of money saved up. Like I said, I'm living off that scared savings. So I told that to this young kid. I told him everything. I just laid it on the line. And I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't help me out. But yeah, and you can do things like paper trade, which means you're not using real money. You just kind of simulate doing it. But anyway, at some point I can go over what I've learned. I can tell you this. I can teach anybody how to do it because, the hard part for me is just doing it. It's like almost like a basketball coach who's 5'6" and can't play on the court, but he's excellent at teaching the game to players that can. And that's kind of me with trading, although I'm not 5'6", a little taller. Anyway, do me a favor, if you don't mind, can you please tap on my forehead so more people can come in? I see some people doing that, but if everybody does it for just like 15 seconds, it really helps, and it gets more, it ups the signal to others. And there's a bunch of people going live tonight, and so we're just trying to draw more people in. Do I believe in the stock market? Isn't it kind of messed up, the whole concept? It can be. It depends on, listen, I could talk about the markets for 20 hours and still not even cover everything I want to talk about, but in general, the thing about a stock is, you've heard of these big companies like, Amazon or Apple or, Tesla. They have a lot of shares and the value of each share is high. So if you multiply those two together, you get what's called the market capitalization or the market cap. And they call those things big cap stocks. And then there are other companies that have smaller amounts of money in shares and are called mid caps. And then you have ones that are much smaller, and I mean way smaller. Like the big companies may be $850 billion market cap. Some of the small ones may be 15 million, which is teeny. And so it's hard to manipulate a company where there's a lot of money because you have to have a lot of money to change the price. But on a smaller stock, it can move a lot more dynamically. They call that volatility in a short period of time if somebody puts a lot of money in or out of it. And so a lot of people play the small cap stocks, and the reason they do it is because you can make tremendous gains from a percentage basis in a short period of time. So is it rigged? It can be. You can have pump and dumps. If you know what that is, some people get together and they create a news story, and then they start buying the stock up, and they start telling others to buy it, so they buy it at the high price, and all they're doing is offering out their shares to the suckers who are buying late. That's called a pump and dump. And then when the real reports come out about the company's finances, the stock crashes, and those who were holding at the top, they call them bag holders, they get to take the losses. So that can happen a lot. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to pick and choose which stocks you're going to trade or hold on to because, you could get stuck in those situations, right? And also there's situations where their stocks will halt if there's a problem or news. You got to understand what your risk is. The key part is never leaving yourself open to too much risk. And you can do that if you know what you're doing. And then usually the wins take care of themselves over time if you can overcome your emotional problems like the ones that I'm sharing with you. And I can tell you, there was 3 times today I could have gotten in the market. I made a little bit of money today, not much. But I could have made a lot more if I would have just had the courage to get in and just stay in. So you'll see. If you ever try to do it, you'll realize very quickly. Now, some people, are better than others out of the gate, right? Good for them. But most traders go through a journey, and it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's like a constant. It's like mental gymnastics is the best way I can put it. And if you're not emotionally sound, which I'm not always, it's not the greatest thing for your sense of well-being, and it can stress you out. Ali, I don't want to divulge my exact location, so I'm not going to answer that. Yeah, so listen, I mean, there's no problem admitting your flaws. In fact, the more you admit your flaws, the easier life gets, right? You're not trying to put on some front to people. So a lot of people will try to tell other people what they aspire to be versus who they are or what they are. I just throw it out there and get whatever. I don't give a shit. Is it snowing? No, it had snowed a day or two ago, and it's cold enough that the snow hasn't melted yet. So, yeah, somebody says when Tesla went to $1,000, I made over $2. Good for you. I'm always happy to hear people that buy stocks, hold on to them, and do well. That's something that I could learn from. The only thing is, in case you don't know much about me, I'm not for participating in corporate America. And I know that may sound crazy, like, why wouldn't you want to participate? Because I have a problem with, the structure of ownership and the manipulation, like you said. When I say I trade stocks, I trade them. I don't want to hold on to them. Because what the companies are doing is they're basically devouring the earth and spoiling the place to grow these big companies more and more for an investor class. That's what's going on. And so I don't want to be a part of that long term. I've given up on, listen, you can have a great portfolio and you can think, oh, look at my investments. Investment is a fancy word for you participating in the fucking up of stuff and fucking over other people. So if you can, it puts a wall between what happens in the real world and what you see on the other side with a bunch of numbers on your statement, right? So if you don't know that, do some research and you'll find out, oh shit, most of the companies that make good money are screwing somebody or many somebodies. Light and bold, if you say that one more time, I'm going to kick you off. Please don't say that. That's not something I want to do. Yeah. Usually if somebody tells you they'll double your money's going to disappear. So I'm not going to send you my money. And please stop asking me. Thank you. Yeah, you get a lot of people who make promises about trading and investing. So, all right, there we go. Have a good night. I can ask nicely, but eventually somebody's not going to listen, so I got to let them go. And I don't like kicking people out of my lives ever. I'm trying to be very patient. But if you ask 3 times and somebody keeps doing the same thing, and by the way, if the person's still listening, I don't know if you are or not, but there may be people who want to send you their money and take the think you're going to double or triple their money. I mean, come on, man. If you could do that with, you wouldn't want to talk to somebody like me. You'd be working for Goldman Sachs or, the most, nobody consistently doubles and triples their money in the market. You might be able to do it for a short period of time, which is possible. And some traders are they're exceptionally good. But nobody's going to consistently double or triple their money. Not the best traders in the world, maybe, if they're lucky, grow their accounts periodically by, quadruple in a year, maybe sometimes 10 times their money. But doubling over and over again is, a compound increase, but it just doesn't work. So, well, I will when the time's right, Ali, I promise you. Yeah, I think a consistent, for most people who are in the markets, if you want to be a long-term holder of stocks, the average return is about, 8 to 10%, maybe 11% historically on the what's called the S&P 500, which is the a basket of 500 companies that are chosen, and they move in and out periodically. But so if they call that the S&P for short, and it's like the benchmark for the market. Used to be the Dow Jones 30, but now there's many more companies. So the S&P 500 is sort of the benchmark that people watch day in, day out to see how the market's doing. But I haven't had a portfolio of stocks since like 1998 is when I got rid of it all, I think. Yeah, because I just don't agree with it. Everybody's different. But I'd be a hypocrite if I owned a bunch of U.S. stocks or other stocks and then complained about the fact that corporations are ruining the world, right? That would make me I'm a hypocrite in enough ways already, so. But anyway, so, the old adage is buy low, sell high. But most people don't know you can do it in the reverse. If something's really overpriced, you can sell short, which means you're borrowing and selling to somebody else, and then later you have an obligation to buy it back. And hopefully it goes lower, because if you spend less to buy it than you got for selling it, you make money. But if it goes higher and you're short the stock, you have to cover it by buying it at the higher price, which means you're losing money. So there's a guy named Michael Burry, who's a famous short seller who accurately predicted the fall of the mortgage market back in 2008. He was 2 years too early. So when he first took the short position, his investors were like freaking out because like 70% of their fund was underwater. But then eventually it did really well. So he was like a genius, quote unquote. But listen, let's say investing and trading is very hard. You got the smartest people in the world, and even they struggle to do it well all the time, right? It's just hard. Trust me. Try it sometime. You're going to find yourself going to places with your emotions that you never thought possible, and it's not good. But the people that are best at it are good at having rules and checklists, and they just don't deviate. You have to be almost very mechanical in what you do. And then there are some people that can do what's called discretional trading, where you're constantly just making adjustments based on your intuition and feel, and that's a whole other animal. And very few people can do that well. And like I said, you can get good for a while. You can make some money this year or next year, but to keep it over a 5-year period is very difficult. So, yeah, I agree. I'm not either. I think if this is where I have problems focusing. So if I literally just watched one instrument day in, day out, every day, I could probably do well with it because I understand exactly what to do. So if I could make myself do it when I know to do it and just sit and wait for what's supposed to happen and not get out, that's a lot of ifs, right? If I was 6'7" and I could run faster, I could play in the NBA, right? I don't know anything like that. So anyway, there's all sorts of there's things called algorithms now, or bots, which you can basically have some other computer or something do it for you. Like, you don't have to be involved. You just put your money into an account. It runs this system that's supposed to make you money. Again, think for a second. Just think, okay? If there was a mechanism that could consistently make money on a regular basis, why would somebody let the public have it? That would be owned by the investment firms. They would have it. There's no such animal. Don't let anybody try to sell you that. Don't spend a bunch of money on some formulaic trading system. The hard part about trading is accepting the fact that you have to do this really long, slow, hard work to get better. That's it. That's the best I can tell you. You have to trade with small amounts first. You have to go over your trades. They call it journaling. So you can review what you did wrong, make notes of it, kind of have a list on the wall saying, don't do this again, dumbass. Keep your risk really low. And eventually you can risk more as you get better and you make less mistakes. That's kind of the process. And I didn't want to go through the process. I still don't want to go through the process. I want to kind of skip to the head of the line. And I think most traders are like that. You want to get the big rewards because you see these other people who make a lot of money. You're like, I want some of that money, right? And that's normal. But unfortunately, they didn't get to that money by luck. They got it by doing the same things that other people don't want to do, right? That's why they make the money, because they were willing to do it. It's hard, and it's a pain. It's tedious. And it requires a lot of time to get used to the feel and flow of markets and how they operate and stuff. Do I use for trading? I have a charting platform called Thinkorswim, which was owned by a company called TD Ameritrade, but then it got bought out by Charles Schwab. So Charles Schwab now owns the software, but they haven't changed the name of the software, although the accounts have shifted over to the actual brokerage, the clearing firms that clear the trades through Schwab. No, I don't use Fidelity or Robinhood. I have used Fidelity in the past. They have something called Active Trader. There's different brokers that process the trades, and they charge commissions for certain things like futures or options, or you can get free trades for stocks on most platforms now. But they front run your orders and they send them through clearinghouses where it's called order flow, payment for order flow, and they take little bits out of lots of trades and then they make their money that way. So just so you know, the other thing about payment for order flow, if you have an order in the market, like a stop loss, this is what causes problems, right? So let's say you're buying something at $100, and if it falls below $95, you're going to get out because you don't want to get clobbered. But you hope it'll go to $110. That's your trade. So that's your plan. And so you might have a stop at $94.90. Well, if you have that order in the market, like placed with your broker, the payment for order flow, they give your order to somebody else. They can see your order. So somebody else who wants to trade against you, if they see enough people doing that, they can come down and swipe out those stops to collect a bunch of stock and then run the price rate back up again. That's called a stop raid. And that happens all the time because the retail traders like me and you, people that don't have a ton of money, we're called retail traders. versus the professional traders that are like, the big money. Most people trade in a very basic manner. They're rookies, basically, right? So we make rookie mistakes. The big banks don't put stop loss orders in the market that other people can see. They're professional, they're disciplined, and they know exactly where they're going to get in and out. And what you try to do as a trader is know how to identify on a chart where those spots are and learn how the banks manipulate the trading day and go with what they do, not have it done to you, but do it with them. That's pretty much it. And there's ways of identifying places of supply and demand on charts where it's more likely than not. There's never a guarantee, but it's more likely than not that something will turn at this point, or whatever. And you learn that by experience, just by watching how price action moves time and time again. It takes years to get really good at it. But once you see it for a while, you understand kind of how it flows. And I've got a great understanding of it now. I've been watching the markets for like 20 years. But it's still hard to do. It's the emotional part never gets easier. That's the problem. Anyway, we can talk about that for decades. I don't want to take up the time doing that, but it says IOF is planning to demolish the homes of two men that rammed people in. It's not real. Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you commit a crime in Israel, or if you're in the occupied territories and you do something like, I don't know, let's say you're a 17-year-old kid and you're driving a car and you try to run over some people, some Israeli civilians, they'll go to your house of your parents or your whomever, and just knock it down. They'll destroy your house. That's what somebody just said. They're planning on demolishing the homes of these two men that were involved in this little crime spree. They unalived an older woman. They got into a car and they ran over. I think they ran over whatever. I think it was 20 people that were Israeli and injured them. Nobody, badly injured. Not just, I saw photographs of it. It looked pretty bad. So Juliet says, there's also a lot of people that just use AI to trade for them and they step away. Like I said, there's different programmable trading methods to do it. Here's my point. If you're somebody that can create a programmable algorithm that makes money, you're going to sell it to Goldman Sachs or State Street or some bank. You're not going to give it to people like me for $49 a month. Think about it. If you had a tool that can consistently pull 20% a day out of the markets, you're not going to give that to somebody like me for $49. You'd be an idiot. So when you buy those things from somebody, you're the idiot, right? So ask any senior trader if they're willing to pay for an AI-driven stock trading program. Someone who's been trading for 25 years who makes a lot of money. You'll get your answer. Yeah. AI has a place, but this is the crazy cold hard truth. Yes, high frequency trading can make money because it's just doing a little bit of this, making fractions of a penny over and over again in little bits of increments, which is called arbitrage, or front running orders. But no computer, I know this sounds crazy, no computer in the world can compute as many variables as a well-trained human can, and also the feel that goes with that. There's a certain feel that comes with trading that you develop over time based on situational awareness, time of day, time of year. There's so many variables you end up taking into account. You just kind of comes part of you. It's hard to explain. But once you start to, and by the way, the best traders have that feel fine-tuned to the greatest degree, and it's amazing how they can look at something going on and go, this is about to happen, and then it just does. It's amazing. And obviously I'm not there yet, but I've gotten a lot better. And I could teach some people, but some of it can't be taught. It's like, how do you teach somebody to play violin perfectly after 40 years? You can't teach that. You can show them the mechanics of the chords and the whatever. You can show them all the basics, but they have to develop their own style and feel. And it's very similar in trading. Yuval Harari. If you know who Yuval Noah Harari is the guy's name. He's an Israeli intellectual, quote unquote. I can't stand him. I cannot stand the guy. Cannot stand him. And that's all I want to say. Do not like him one bit. Yeah, I think he's a dangerous guy. Let me answer some more questions here. Anybody in the box? Nope, nobody in the box. Nobody wants to talk, huh? You're not the only one who doesn't like it. I don't like to talk about people I don't like. The guy gives me the creeps. The U.S. today, if you didn't hear this or not, the U.S. formally declared the Houthi rebels a T-word group. Not that that's any surprise, and that therefore they can sanction them, restrict certain things going in and out of the country to help them, financial stuff, aid, that kind of thing. It's just more ways to hurt the Yemeni people, because just like what happens in Gaza, the age group will take certain things for their needs, and the people who are supposed to get most don't get it sometimes, right? That's true. You know, people who make that criticism of the age group, they're right. That happens, you know. And usually the justification is that they're struggling for a greater long-term goal. So therefore, it's reasonable for them to take stuff for themselves, and people have to suffer because it's for the greater good long-term, you know, for whatever that's worth. So anyway, okay, so let's talk about this charity that I found real quickly, just to let everybody know. So I'm on Telegram, and I also am here on TikTok. And so someone reached out to me initially, and they may even be here listening tonight. And it was a female, and she said she had gathered a group of women together, and that they were working on a concept to have one of their contacts who has manufacturing capability for clothing to be able to make the clothes and not charge any profit, meaning that if it costs $10 to buy the fabric and it costs $5 to pay the worker, they would only charge the $15 to provide it to the person rather than $25 or whatever example. So if people were to donate money, it would go further and help more people. So that's what they've been doing, and I've seen their GoFundMe page, and they asked me if I would, promote it here as well as put it onto my Linktree, which I've done. And so that's what I'm doing right now. First time. And I've never once promoted a third-party fundraiser before. So it took some time. I had to make sure it was on the up and up, that kind of thing, to vet it properly. But the good news is it's legitimately helping people. So if you are somebody who is so inclined, you have a few extra bucks or even more, and you want to make a donation, my donation was $50. For just to let you know, that's what I thought that I could do without being, too much or too little. That was for me. But you're your own person. You do what you can. $5 is fine. $1 is fine. $1,000 is great, or more if you have it. But anyway, so the money's going to the right places as far as I can tell. Now, anything's possible, right? And I can't put my total blessing on anything because I don't know everything, right? But my best spidey sense tells me everything's on the up and up, okay? So if you want to find the link for that, it's really simple. Everything I do is going to be in my Linktree because it's just easier to do it that way. So if you go into my bio and you click on the Linktree, or if you're outside the country and you want to donate, my Linktree is spelled out in my bio because they've taken away the link outside the US. I don't know why. But so it's spelled Linktree, LINKTR, and for some reason they put a period between the R and EE, so it's linktra.ee, Linktree, / and then whatever somebody's name is. In this case, it's just my name, Chip Barnes. So if you go to a web browser and enter that, Linktree with the period, and then Chip Barnes, it'll take you to the same thing. I'll show you what it looks like right now. All right, let's show you what it looks like. So if you go to my Linktree, it looks like this. This is what comes up. Let me show you here's my account, first of all. So you can see here on my account, here's me. And you see on my account right here, it says, my followers, and it's got my little bio, and then underneath that it says Linktree. This is what you have to type into a browser if you don't have the link. Here's the link. And what's crazy is I've gotten emails from people outside the country saying, "Hey, Chip, your link's not on your Linktree, on your bio." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they sent me screenshots, and sure enough, if you're in Europe or Asia or the Middle East, this isn't there. It's gone. It looks like this, which is crazy. Anyway, that's the link. If you click on it, you will see this. So the very first link on here is that what I just described to you. There's that link for the donation to keep the people of Gaza warm. Okay? And they have a GoFundMe. That's what it attaches to. Here's my TikTok backup. I strongly recommend people follow anyone's backup account because any minute the account that we're talking on right now could come down for no reason other than the fact that someone doesn't like me for whatever reason, which is probably a lot of people, by the way. But at least the social media companies are doing funny stuff. So if you follow my backup account, we'll never lose each other because I'll always be able to go live on that one in case this one I can't. So I also have some content on that backup account that is not on my main account. And I have some videos of me and my dog Ruby that are kind of fun to watch. So if you want to check that out, here's my TikTok. This Linktree is used on different services. That's why the TikTok's listed here. And then of course you can see Instagram, normal stuff, right? Instagram and Twitter, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So you'll see, it's pretty simple. And then let me do the last page here. Let's see here. Oh, it's going to make me go dark again, I think. Nope, here we go. Yeah, it makes me do it again. I don't know why it makes me do that. Then here's the second page. So what you can see here is these are by the way, it's all one big list online, but I had to do it in 2 pictures because it wouldn't fit on my phone. So you can see there's a Telegram group for Palestine in Focus. This has a lot of people involved, by the way. This is pretty cool. You get photos, updates, pictures, video, commentary. And then this is a group chat for people who want to talk about stuff that I want to talk about, videos, current events. Here's one about just other political stuff outside of Gaza right here. Ukraine, Russia, Sudan, Yemen, the Congo, other stuff like that. And then here are my donation links. So I have a Patreon service, and I have a Venmo and a Cash App, and people have been very kind to help me recently, so thank you for that. So if you want to help out, please do. I live a very simple life. I'm not somebody who's going to go spend your money on a car, a piece of jewelry, or something, or a big house. And by the way, let me just say this for a second, and I don't have proof of this, but a lot of people have talked about this, so I'm just going to put my 2 cents in. So does anybody, do me a favor, if you've heard of somebody named Shaun King, can you type the number 1 into chat if you know who Shaun King is? S-H-A-U-N, King. Type the number 1 into chat if you don't mind. Shaun King. Anybody heard of Shaun King? I don't see any numbers coming in. Nobody's heard of Shaun King, huh? Nobody? That's interesting. We have 122 people. No one's heard of Shaun King, huh? Okay, 1 person says they have. There's another person. Another person. Okay, so yes, someone says yes. Yeah, that's good. Please raise your hand. If you won't raise your hand, please raise your hand. Okay, so a lot of people have heard of Shaun King. So I didn't know any of this when I first, you learn stuff obviously about people. I didn't know much about Fiona Ryan when I first came on TikTok. And then I learned about her and had one impression initially, and then it changed. So obviously I was following Shaun King. He had all these updates on Gaza and all the photographs and pictures on Instagram and stuff like that. But then you hear stuff, right? You hear grumblings in the background from different people. And so I'm just going to share this with you. I've talked about it before, but it reminded me to bring this up when it came to fundraising. I would just say this: be very careful with who you give money to, including me, by the way, not just anybody like Shaun. But Shaun had a very large presence of, I think, like 3 or 6 million people. And Shaun's been in the advocacy game for a while, for lack of a better term. And there's been a lot of accusations, which I can't substantiate, but I'm just passing them along, where people have said that, he did fundraising for A, and I know people have said this has been debunked. The evidence that I've seen debunking it doesn't debunk it, or I would accept that. But the allegations are that the money that was supposed to go to cause A didn't get there in its entirety, or a lot of it, I don't know. For example, one thing I heard was there was a company selling these very expensive hoodie shirts, like hoodies, sweatshirts. And people prepaid a bunch of them, and then the company shut down, and they didn't get the shirts, but the money went in. So anyway, he has a history of these questionable circumstances that's, and again, I'm not substantiating this. I've seen at least a dozen videos of people talking about this in very specific ways, and I can't, they seem to be very confident. That's all I'm saying. But the point is, be careful with anybody who asks you for money. In fact, don't give to the one if you think the one that I don't know for sure. Listen, I can't give you a 100% guarantee. Although the people that I've interacted with, they seem legit, but and the cause seems good. So I donated, and if the $50 doesn't make it to somebody, that's too bad. I thought it was a good thing to do. You can do your own due diligence, but the only thing I can ever tell you is what has to do with me and what I won't do, and I'll keep my word to you, but I can't speak for anybody else in the world, right? It's hard to get guarantees from others, but so the point is, if somebody comes to you and asks for money like Shaun King or anybody else, ask what the accountability is going to be or whatever. And then if they can't give you that, then like for me, I'm listing all my donations on my website, and I'm showing very people my expenditures on my website. And then you can see for yourself, okay, this much money he brought in, this is how much money he spent, this is what he spent it on. And then you know what's going on. I think that's fair to have transparency. That Shaun hasn't had that. I know that for a fact. So, and that takes a little more work. Thanks, Mary. That's good. Yeah, I know that, listen, I didn't do this right away. I said I would when we first talked about it. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. And I said I'd get right on it, and then I didn't because I've got all this other stuff, and I haven't been feeling well. And then finally somebody gave me like a pretty firm nudge, And so I got to it and got it done today. So I'm glad to have it done. I did a video about it, by the way. So I just dropped it. before we came on the live. So when we finish up, you can check it out, and it kind of just says the same thing. Anyway, yeah, just, caution is the better thing, especially because, you got to wonder if you're somebody who takes advantage of this kind of tragedy for money. I mean, come on. I mean, these people are really suffering. And so I just don't know how people could do that. That sounds crazy to me. Anyway, I give donations to people. Yeah, by the way, just to let you know, in the notes, like you get comments on videos or messages from people, and somebody messaged me saying something like this. I swear to God, this is not a joke. He goes, "Hey, could you please send me $4,500? My brother wants to start a business and I need to pay some debts off." I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. I swear. And you know what I said? Sure, the payment's on the way. That's what I said. And then they messaged me like a week later, like, "I haven't seen the money yet. What have you done it?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did it. That kind of, it's just, come on. Pretty funny, right? Nellie says, "I'm sorry, my phone died the other day when you were answering my question." Oh, it's okay. Whatever the case may be, that's fine. We'll get to it eventually, right? So anyway, yeah, so I don't know what else is on people's minds. I mean, the conflict, I think 164 people today, I heard, in Gaza were unalived by Israeli strikes, which just keeps happening over and over again. And there was a representative from Israel named Elon Levy. I don't know if you've seen this guy before. I mean, he's a liar extraordinaire. And he was being pressured by different interviewers to try to justify, not only, to rebut what South Africa has claimed, but all the other stuff that's come to light. And he just keeps saying all this bullshit, and he expects people to believe this crap. Like Israel goes out of its way. We're the only army in the world that warned, all that crap, It's like, just enough. Just say, we want to unalive everybody in our path. We want the land. Go F yourself. Okay, I respect that, right? At least you're being honest, which is better. Somebody says they want to hear me talk about the new Cold War on Russia, China, and the multipolar world. Yeah, we've talked about that at times before. We can get into that a little bit if you want. So, if you don't know, the U.S. has been in control of the world for a long time, since post-World War II. And the way in which the U.S. has kept control on things, of course, its military and the financial system. So the use of the U.S. dollar as a common settlement for commodity trades and transactions around the world has given the U.S. a tremendous leg up on other countries. And if you don't know how finance works and how currencies go, if you have to take your local currency and switch it into somebody else's currency, that creates demand for that currency. So if everyone is switching their local currency into the dollar, it creates a huge support for the dollar so that its value doesn't fall. It keeps people wanting the dollars. And therefore, the U.S. has been able to maintain a standard of living. Our dollar has held its value for a long time. Even though we've heard about inflation and money printing, our dollar reached its peak in like 1984. And it's been kind of slowly drifting off since then. But it's not gone through a huge crash like a lot of people have predicted. And that's because there's just a lot of dollars out there. They're everywhere. They're so ingrained in international trade, and all sorts of people have reserves for having sold stuff, and it's going to take time for that to unwind. But here's the rub. There's a shakeup that's happened. Now, other people have tried to do this before. If you're dealing with people who are controlling the currency system, they have a lot of control over you. They can take your money. If you have money on deposit with them and you do something they don't like, they can, like what happened with Russia. Russia had a lot of money on reserve with the United States in New York banks, and when Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. just kept it, took it. Okay, so if somebody could steal your money, that's a big deal, right? That's one. And two, they can put sanctions on you. They can make it very difficult, just like they're doing right now with the Houthis. The U.S. is using its financial strength to make it difficult for somebody to get things like aid and to do transactions. You get excluded from the system. So obviously, if you're a country that's on the receiving end of that behavior, you're always being threatened, or you always have these, potential problems in your radar. Well, you'd like to find a way out from under that, right? If you can. The problem is, it's like, imagine when you try to stop buying something from a guy who's going to break your arm if you don't keep buying from him, right? That's kind of the U.S. So a couple people have tried. So the guy who used to run the country of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, tried to switch selling oil in something other than U.S. dollars, in a local regional currency he had proposed, called a gold-backed dinar. that would be used to transact oil in their region, like as a bartering, like a system to stay away from the US dollar. Because they didn't want to help the US, like they could care less about the US. And same thing with Libya, Muammar Gaddafi. They both tried individually or in tandem to create like this pan-Arab network to try to dominate the trade and to have more power for their countries and become the dominant players in the region. Well, the U.S. didn't like that, right? The U.S. central banks and the financiers are like, no, homie, don't play that. So what did they do? I mean, we know what happened, right? I mean, they're obviously both gone. So when two individuals that are relatively weak, people that don't have huge militaries, try to do something, well, you can put the kibosh on it, right? But what happens if 5 countries with major militaries and nuclear weapons try to do it, right? Different story, right? You can't like smack the whole group. You're going to cause international strife and maybe world war with nuclear weapons. So I'm assuming this is what this person wanted me to talk about. So there was a breakaway where some countries got together, having watched all this happen and happening and wanting to be able to divorce themselves from this, they decided to form like an alternative bloc. And they call it the BRICS nations. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So Russia and China are the major players in that group, let's face it. And so they're aligned on a financial and on a trade basis more than any other 2 countries in the world right now. Now, China still depends on the U.S. to consume a lot of the production that they send, through the same waterways we've been talking about, the Suez, as far as sending stuff to the U.S., both Pacific and Atlantic. So it's a weird marriage, right? We can't get rid of China because our corporations have outsourced much of the labor and production to China. So if we had a war right now, half the shit that we get, it couldn't be made. The companies couldn't make any profit. They'd have to rebuild the factories back here, all the ones that have been closed down. They call that outsourcing, right? So there's this weird tug and pull going on, but they've made it clear, obviously, that they're moving away from using the dollar, and they've decided they're going to go with something called a gold-backed yuan. They haven't officially announced it yet, but that's probably what it's going to be. A yuan is the unit, or the renminbi is the currency of the Chinese. It's their currency, and because they're the strongest economy in the region, they're gonna create the currency system. But it's backed by gold. So if you don't know the difference between gold-backed currency and non-gold-backed currency, something that's not backed by a physical thing is called a fiat currency, and it only has value based on the people's perception that it's going to be taken by each other. It's like a faith-based system. So in the United States, we have a faith system, and the currency is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, meaning they can tax us to pay obligations in case things don't work out in some way. And that's their power. And people know that. That's why it gets used. But in other places, like we used to have a gold-backed currency here. Up until 1971, believe it or not, you could literally take your $20 Federal Reserve note down to the bank, and you could get $20 worth of gold handed to you. I know it sounds crazy, right? But President Nixon in 1971 terminated that. We went off the quote-unquote gold window. We went off the gold standard, and we went to a fiat currency. And under a fiat system, nobody's controlling how much of the currency you can create. So obviously, if you have, $1 million in circulation, it's way bigger, but just as an example, now you can have $1,100,000 in circulation. You can do 1,000,002. It just starts to grow and grow. Of course, when you have more dollars and the same amount of production, the value of the currency goes down and things get more expensive. And we're seeing that now because of the accelerated rate of the money printing or the creation of extra currency to meet obligations. That's why when people talk about the economic thing hurting Israel, the U.S. is just going to print more dollars and send them over. As long as people are still taking them, they'll still have the impact. It's only when people stop taking them, which they're doing very incrementally, but it hasn't become a wholesale, total detachment from the dollars. But as that gets more pervasive, it's really going to hurt the United States. And it is. And believe me, the people in charge know this, and that they're trying to prevent it. It's just not working very well. So this is all part of the rub, the financial system. And, as the U.S. prints more and more money, sends more and more money to foreign wars, gets extended militarily, stops helping people at home, there's going to be more unrest. People are pissed. I mean, right now they're pissed. Like, why are we supporting this war machine in Gaza? Why are we giving $100 billion to Ukraine? Why are we doing all this other stuff to help these, massive corporations with subsidies and tax breaks, and billionaires don't pay taxes, like all that. And then the people down the street are losing ground. They can't pay their rent. They can't afford health care, the whole 9 yards. We're watching it happen right now. So that usually leads to unrest, and that's kind of where we are right now. We're moving in the wrong direction as a populace, unfortunately, and these changes aren't going to get better, in my opinion, unfortunately. And it's because the power structures prevent it from getting better. And so I was on a live last night. I don't know if anybody heard this, but there was this one guy who was, dead set on the idea that elections provide every avenue to gain the changes that are necessary. We just have to get the right people and do the right amount of organizing towards that end. And I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is that people only have so much time and energy, right? After your day of work, you're tired. The last thing you want to do is, go down to the meeting hall and talk to 20 people face to face about what you have to do to save the world, right? You just want to, have your beverage of choice, hot chocolate, coffee, tea, beer, whatever it is, and then go to bed and try to survive the next day and not be too stressed out, especially if you have kids and others, just life is tough, right? It's hectic for everybody. But my point is, if you're going to try to organize people, you're going to do the effort, why not do something that has a chance of being effective versus stuff that has a very small or no chance of being substantially effective? And yes, there are certain things that candidates and people can do in a very limited sense, but it's very limited. It's becoming more limited as the days go by, unfortunately. So, we know the money that's come in with the, corporate personhood and the Citizens United, which is unlimited money is speech. And that makes it very difficult for people like you and I to make a difference, because if we call the office of our senator or congressperson, which many have done during this conflict, they take a message, right? Thank you for calling. We appreciate it. We'll make sure the senator hears, that kind of thing. Come on. Now, if you're somebody who has $20 billion and you just donated $100 million to the super PAC last year that helped get this person elected, and they pretty much reminded them that all the time, and that person calls, what do you think is going to happen? Senator's going to stop the meeting, go pick up the phone and talk to this person. It's the access / moneyed interest. That's what's going on. And it's not that simple, but you get the idea. But it does happen sometimes, just like that. So, and these rich people know it. And it's money well spent, because for every dollar they give the political process, they typically get back, $50 to $100 in benefits from whatever changes occur or that don't occur to their benefit. So that's the multipolar world. When somebody says multipolar world, what they mean is that there used to be a unipolar world where the U.S. basically controlled everything, and everybody had to kind of play ball or get in trouble. And now it's fragmenting. And there's more and more players that sort of have their own interests, and it's breaking apart into a multipolar world, meaning there's not one particular country or player that has all the control. It's broken apart. It's more distributed. And it's going to keep changing. And it's just like the geopolitical landscape. Everyone has their interests. They try to cooperate where they can that benefits them, but sometimes they got to, go to loggerheads over stuff, depending upon how serious it gets. So you look at the alignment. It's pretty simple. You have the U.S., you have the European states, which tend to be subservient to the U.S. You have Canada, you have Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. That's pretty much the block of U.S. That's the one side. And then you have, Russia, China, Iran, Brazil. Now, India kind of sits between it all, and it's kind of playing both sides against the middle. So they're not really firmly committed to each camp. So I'm not sure what would happen with them if things popped off. But I'm pretty sure that Iran is not going to side with the United States. I think we pretty much have that straight, right? And you can throw in Israel to the other block too, obviously. So, speaking of Israel, this is something that really bothers me. I don't know if you're on Twitter, but I see a lot of posts on Twitter that show people from Israel, soldiers, dancing on the beaches of Gaza that have been destroyed, completely just flattened to the ground, and singing all these songs in Hebrew about how much they're celebrating this thing, Amalek and stuff like that. And it just makes me sick to my stomach. I mean, it's like what would they say if the H group was dancing and singing on top of, unalive bodies of their countrymen? How would they feel? They would hate that, right? That would make them crazy. So anyway, sometimes scratch your head. The other thing, I've recorded videos recently that I haven't posted. And there's another video by Owen Jones I want to talk about. He's from the UK, but he lives in France. He's a political / interviewer kind of guy that I like to follow. And I'll talk about his video in a second. But I made one today about the fact that I'm so sick of being in these lives on TikTok, and when there are people that are pro-Israel that are really supportive, like hardcore, they're so damn rude. And they talk over people, and they interrupt people, and they get loud, and they get dismissive and mean and arrogant, and they act like, how could anybody else think anything different from them? Because, of course, they have the ultimate barometer on the truth, and everything else is propaganda and all that. And they don't know shit. They don't know jack shit. they're so incredibly misinformed and uninformed. It's painful to listen to them. But because they've been programmed since birth to believe certain things, there's no other thing to them that exists outside of what they've been told to think. And they've spent very little time, if any, ever challenging their beliefs, which is the opposite of being a critical thinker, right? You have to challenge your beliefs and say, okay, what if, and I ask this question, is it possible in the world that anything you're thinking could be inaccurate and there could be other things that are different that might be accurate? Is that possible? Nope, not possible. if I would not say that about anything that I know, because anything's possible, right? And even though you think you've maneuvered to a place where it makes sense, or you're thinking if something different comes up that makes more sense or has logical, fact-based explanation, then you say okay, and you go with that, right? So, hey guys, please check the poll for the chat rules. Let me check the chat rules. Rude messages muted, no all caps, no spamming, repeated messages, use watermelon instead of flagship. Yeah, that sounds cool. By the way, we should do some more polls. I mean, I don't know if we should coordinate ahead of time, but I know in Eric Warsaw's, they do polls all the time that I think are pretty fun to do. So I like Eric's stuff. We do have somebody in the guest queue. So Juliet, let me see what Juliet has on her mind. If she can. Oh, there she is.
Hey, yeah, this is my first, I don't know, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm South African. I've been in the UK for 8 years now.
Okay.
I think you know a little bit about me, but yeah, I grew up near the end of apartheid. A bunch of my family were in Israel, who were conscripted. Like my father was, my uncle was. He ran away a couple times. I know a lot about like what's gone on in Africa just as an engineer, because I'm a civil engineer. And I've been cut off from a lot of platforms. Most recently, I worked for Transport for London, which is very, very interesting. And then you work for different, sort of projects. Like you'll get to work with a little bit of like MI5 or, all these different organizations and things that I can't talk about. So I'm only talking about things that I can. But yeah, it is interesting that people can't sort of have that like critical thinking at the moment. So when I talk about something, like I'll jump between like something like Fox News in America versus like Al Jazeera versus like everything in between to get my own point of view of like what I feel is like resonates. And I think a lot of people don't do that, and I think that's very, very critical. So when I speak on what I've seen, or yeah, I try and just do that from a sort of like authentic place. Like when I was speaking about like what was happening in the hospitals here during COVID, I was volunteering when we didn't have a lot of design work. And I was volunteering at the Nightingale Hospital at the Excel Centre, which is a very big venue in London. And there were only 100 patients, and they had built that for 1,000. And we didn't see more than 100. And that's a very, very big, expensive venue to get like all the logistics in there.
Can you clarify what you meant by you said we spent this and we got this? I'm not clear on what you're saying about that.
Oh, so so the government spends a lot of money building sort of a hospital called the Nightingale Hospital.
Where is this, in the UK or in
It's in
South Africa?
London. It's in London.
Okay.
So this is the Nightingale Hospital. It's a very, very expensive venue on the Thames that's used for huge events. So they built 1,000 beds, and they were like army coming in and all these sorts of things, but we didn't get more than 100 patients coming in at that time, where it was just pretty much insane how much money was spent on that. And then when I was speaking to like Heather on on her channel, I was just like to another doctor, I was like, yeah, it was pretty much a front. And I don't know what that was for, but the doctors was saying that they knew that it was a front for something, and I don't know. I was just trying to keep social because I don't like being isolated, and we didn't have work, so I was working for them. Um,
I'm having a really hard time trying to piece together the pieces of this puzzle you're weaving. Can you try to put something? If I'm missing something from the crowd, please tell me. I'm just trying to understand what you're trying to say because I'm not piecing it together well.
yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that in a negative way. I just was trying to clarify that. I don't know. I heard hospital. I don't know. I couldn't make sense of it all. Anyway, so I wasn't trying to be rude to you, Juliet. If you want to, you said it was your first time coming up, which I know can be a little bit unsettling, and I totally get that. So if you want to regroup and maybe, I don't know, do a little outline and then come back with that, I'm happy to have you back up if that can be of use. So anyway, I would have been curious to find out what you were trying to say because I was curious that a big hospital was built and that I guess it was during the time of the pandemic and it may not have gotten enough usage versus the money that was spent. I'm not really sure that was going from there. That's kind of what I took out of it. Anyway, thank you for the beginning of that. If you have the other part of it, I'd love to hear it. Somebody says it was planned for 1,000 beds, I guess, and then only used by about 200 people. Yeah, that's a shame. Again, you have like these Olympic events. I don't know if you're familiar with the Olympics, but these cities will spend tons and tons of money to host the Olympics. And then they have all the stadiums and all this other stuff that never gets used again. It's like, seems crazy. And I guess it makes money from people coming there. But I don't know. I don't know how that works. It just seems like it's too much. Is there a link or email we can send to the ICJ if it is them? Just me. There is a site where people can submit some evidence for the South African claims. You can Google it, and it's been circulating on TikTok as well. I just don't have it. It's in my saved videos, but it would take me. I have so many videos saved. It would take me a while to locate it. Yeah, I've seen that. Somebody said they have a video of somebody unaliving bodies in a pile or something like that extent. Somebody sent me a video early on in this showing something like that. It was with people being kind of shuttled over to this pit, thrown into the pit, and then they would, fire at them. And that was, I believe, in Syria. I don't think it was from Israel because I don't know, I've seen videos like that from places like Syria when ISIS was in charge, stuff like that. But it wasn't ISIS. It was some other group. But, you got to be careful. I've learned this the hard way. People have said, and I don't think people did it intentionally, but people will send you videos because somebody says it to them. They forward it really quickly. You get it, and you want to go with it because if it's new, you want to show it. But then you got to be careful though because I've done it once before and it wasn't accurate. And I was like, damn. So I try to make sure I can, verify it first or at least get some sort of corroboration. And I'm not a journalist by any stretch. I'm just trying not to mislead anybody unintentionally. Let me get some water real quick. My voice is getting a little scratchy. Just one sec. Thank you. Oh, thanks. I needed that. Can I update you about CNN? Can somebody please claim to me what I have to update you about CNN? Did something happen to CNN? I don't know. I keep getting these questions about, can you tell me about this? I'm like, what happened with this? Is there something I need to know about CNN that didn't happen? That did happen? Did somebody blow it up or something? I don't know what you mean. Some news that I don't have my head around. If you can just give me some indication, it would be helpful. Yeah, the question said, can you update us about CNN? I'm not sure what you mean. This is 321. Does anybody else know what's going on with let me see. If voting is not okay, here's a fair question. Yeah, if voting isn't the answer, what is? First of all, not everything is this or that, right? Sometimes it's this and this and this can all be done because none of them are necessarily bad. It's just the question is, what is the overall efficacy and likelihood of just the one having the desired outcome or being a better tool to get towards desired outcomes? And so, I would like to be wrong about this, and maybe I am. And if I am, I'd be the happiest guy in the world to find that out, because I don't want there to be a loggerhead or a block for us to be able to achieve change, right? If we could vote for various things that would eventually get enough, quote, good people in that could then turn the tide and make it a better world and more egalitarian and less war and more taking care of the domestic population and some of the needs at home and helping people where they need it internationally, but not overdoing it. That'd be a great world to be in, right? And people have a better life and everyone's happier, right? That'd be the goal. But to that end, that's not the structure in which we find ourselves now. And the question is, who's controlling those things and what would they be willing or not willing to do to change some of those things? Because just face it, if you and I were sitting on the other side of that and we're at the top, and there are other people like perhaps you and I at the quote unquote middle or bottom, and we aspire to make it better, well, that's better for us, but worse for them, right? Every dollar that you and I get is like $1 million they don't get to keep, or whatever the numbers are, So what would make you, if you were on the ownership side, give something? Like, what would make you change? And it's not going to be out of the kindness of your heart, right? There's going to have to be some external pressure that has to be brought to bear for you to even consider it, much less do it. And so if you look at voting as a path for change, and we remember voting is at 3 levels. There's local, state, and then federal. And the closer you get to the ground, the more effective your voting is. So you have a better chance to influence the election. There's not as many layers and money involved. And you're going to have a direct impact on your community by voting for somebody like, for example, the county government or county executive or alderman or whatever the case may be. Then if you're voting for a state senator or a governor, more people are in the middle, a lot of business people, a lot of political entities. And then at the federal level, it just gets out of control, right? You got lobbyists coming out the ears, you got committees, you got all sorts of crazy stuff, different practices. Our federal government is just, it's a mess. So the question is, where is our time best spent? Like, where can we get the best bang for our activity buck, so to speak? And many argue, like the person I spoke with last night, his point was that, the organizing that needs to be done around issues. He was talking about what's called the Justice Democrats. And his argument is that the Democratic Party is a better, organization through which to try to achieve the changes that are necessary. And the problem is mostly the Republican Party and blocking the things to help the average person, for example. And while I understand that, and I can see the thinking there, and maybe in a very small extent that may still be the case, but that gap has narrowed dramatically, where maybe 25 years ago, there was a plausible argument to be made for voting for Democrats, insofar as they worked harder to work with unions, and they worked harder to protect the working class, and they weren't quite as tied up with corporate money and all those things that would make it more difficult for them to do things that we just talked about. But the problem is that the money has become so pervasive in these processes that in order for them to survive and have a chance to even get into power, they've kind of had to get into bed with some of these larger money holders. They're not quite to the extent as Republicans still. The Republicans still take more money, but the gap is closed so dramatically that enough money is there that it causes the same problems. Where instead of serving constituents and the welfare of the public, you a lot of times end up having to serve the interest of those who fund your campaign so that you can stay in power. So it all comes back to the money. Like everything in life seems to be, like, but especially in politics, it comes back to the money. So here's the challenge. Let's say right now that all these magical candidates appear and we get to vote them all in. And after this election cycle, we have, let's say, 10% of all the politicians that are gone and 10% new are in. That's about the most you can expect to get. That'd be a miracle, right? But let's say you get them. And the question is, then what? What is the system in which they have to function and operate? What are the incentives and what are the, punishments that they deal with politically? And so you learn very quickly when you go into office in the United States that you either raise money and work within the party structure, or when it comes time to actually get reelected and you need money to overcome a well-funded opponent, you don't get the money because you didn't do the bidding of the party. They need to count on you for votes for certain laws and stuff like that. And if you get a little too out of line, when it comes time for your reelection, guess what? They're going to run somebody against you, or they're not going to help you. You're going to lose your seat to somebody else. That's how the game is played. So a lot of times you're kind of forced to do things you may not even personally want to do. That's politics, right? You have to kind of, you have to kind of give up your conscience to be able to do what works, what's effective, right? So given that those are the elements that these people have to go up against, it really is, it's doesn't really matter for the most part who gets in, because the forces that control the way people move within a system don't change. And so when I talk about what else, people say, okay, well then what else is there? Let's talk about that. So think of it this way. If you have a situation where you're not able to get change done through a traditional process, you have to do something other than traditional, right? Just something else. So what would cause, getting back to that question, if you were somebody who had $100 million and you're used to giving $10 million, or let's say you have $1 billion, you give $10 million each election cycle, and things are staying the way you want them, tax policy doesn't change, the money that's getting issued by different spending bills goes your way, whatever it may be. So what would bother you? What would make you your head up, right? Something that changed that. Because you have your way. Well, what is it that would be other than your way? Well, if you have a business in the United States, or multiple businesses, or ownership in lots of companies, things flow through the economy, right? You have people buying stuff, you have people selling stuff, you have things moving around, there's all this logistics, there's all this money changing hands, and that's how you get your profits. It's the machine, the system, the circulatory system. So one of the questions would be, well, what if that slowed or stopped? Would somebody head for that? Probably, right? So that's a point. What if the people who work for these 100 companies that this rich person owns, what if they didn't show up? What if they said, no, I'm not coming to work until you change X, Y, and Z, because X, Y, and Z is what's screwing us over, right? Or what if you decided not to buy anything? Enough people did that, right? Enough people did it. It's hard to get that, but if enough people did it, it would have an impact, right? We've been talking about avoiding Starbucks and avoiding McDonald's and Disney and whomever. And that's good. But in terms of the numbers, the scale that's needed to really have a huge impact, to really do, really harm these companies, is not at scale yet, right? And same thing for these other issues. It has to be at a larger scale. And therein lies the problem. Because the system that runs this, not only is it controlled by money within the electoral process, but they also spend money on other things that make it more difficult for people to get together and talk about this stuff. They have Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. And what do people do? They're in their own little tribes. And one person points across the way and says, Trump is the bad guy. He's got orange hair. He's a criminal. And he deserves to be in jail, not in office. He started January 6th, an insurrection. And you got the Republicans going, these morons don't understand. We need to have guns to protect against tyranny. We don't want purple-headed kids wearing nose rings telling us what to do and telling us which bathroom, all that stuff. You get into that kind of shit, right? And meanwhile, the people at the top with that $100 million, $1 billion are sitting pretty while the same things keep going on, because nobody's coming together to fight that. And so what has to change? People have to come together to fight that. That's it. It's a very simple answer. Easy to say, like lose weight, sounds simple, hard to do, right? We've all tried to, it's not easy. So what do you do though? Now, my point was to this person on the live last night was, everyone has a certain amount of energy within them to contribute to something, anything, whatever, right? So if you're going to get somebody to go out and work for candidate A or B, for a Democrat, let's say it's a Justice Democrat. This person says, if we just got more Justice Democrats, okay, you go out and work for the Justice Democrat. They get elected in. So let's say you have 6 more people in the House of Representatives than you did the time before, right? You somehow were able to overcome the money. You got them in. Okay, then what? Same problem, same grind. You're going to go same meat grinder, right? It's like a wood chipper. Get into it, try to go forward, boom, you get smacked down. Because the real money operates through the party structure. You have the different, campaign committees and the different party structures that try to keep people who want to change the status quo out. Look what happened with Bernie Sanders, for God's sakes. He was trying just to take on Hillary Clinton in the primary in 2016. And what did the Democratic Party do to Bernie Sanders? They completely screwed the guy and made it so he couldn't even compete for the nomination. That's what the establishment does. It does whatever it has to do to maintain power, up to and including, 1963, right? So people always talk about these sort of, swan, people running for power. Some people suggest that why don't you run or whatever? Why don't you enter politics? Because I know better. Someone like me, my voice is much better served to this type of activity to try to spread awareness. I'm not a political creature insofar as I can even begin to think about playing that game. And I know full well that I wouldn't be allowed to play the game, even if I could get in, that wouldn't last. Even if I was in for one term as a congressman or 6 years as a senator, or even 4 years as a president, I don't think I'd last 24 hours, someone like me. So, and because these kind of ideas are a big threat to the structure and establishment and the status quo. Let's face it. Look back at history. Even some of the heroes now that we look back and say, this person's a great person, at the time they were hated because they were trying to unsettle the status quo. Martin Luther King Jr., if you don't know this, he was hated, absolutely hated by people in the establishment. They hated his guts. But only after people see now, generations later, that this guy was doing something for good, and what he did spurred change that was necessary and good for the country. But change is never looked at favorably at the time, nor will this. So it's hard to talk to somebody who's unaware of the problems we're in and to say, hey, we need to do A, B, and C. And your guy looks at you and says, what do you mean? What are you talking about, man? I got my softball game. I'm going to watch Netflix with my kids. My kids have soccer practice. Get the hell out of my face, right? It's just not on their radar. But eventually people realize by personally becoming marginalized, like life gets tough for them. Then they'll have that conversation. They're not so big into watching Netflix anymore. They're willing to listen up for a bit, right? Because things are tough. Same thing goes when you're organizing a union. People are still doing their BS bickering. But when they organize the union, one thing they don't do, they don't ask you if you're for Trump or for Biden, because you'll have no union members. If everybody's going to fight with each other over other things, you want to talk about your wages, your vacation time, maybe your 401k or your retirement or whatever it may be, whatever you're trying to get better, improved. That's where you focus, and you put the other stuff aside. But in a union, you don't have people purposely trying to divide you, whereas in society, we have these ways for things that flow through the communication systems that purposely kind of tribalize the society. And it doesn't even have to be conspiratorial. It's just that there's networks that serve a constituency that are all about their echo chamber and vice versa. And if two people are bickering, the people up at the top aren't going to be messed up because they're not going to come together with enough scale and power to push back. That's what has to change. Just like if you're in a union and you can't organize anybody, you're not going to be able to go on strike and fight the power, right? You're going to be stuck, individualized and powerless. That's pretty much it. So how would that be? How would it come to be? It's not easy, right? Let's face it. This is a monumental thing to do. It's almost beyond comprehension. It's happened before. Other societies have been through these things. So they're sometimes called, not necessarily violent, but they're called revolutions, right? People go through a major shift of consciousness and they want change. So they do things out of the ordinary to try to achieve it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen here. I don't think it's going to happen here. And I'm certainly not encouraging it to happen because it's very, it's unsettling and it can be very tumultuous, right? And who knows what the response would be even if it were to occur, right? A lot of times governments, if they see this stuff brewing, they crack down on it. A good example is the trucker strike in Canada. If you don't know what that was, there were a bunch of truckers in Canada who were being told by the federal authorities that in order for them to operate their trucks, they had to get, the thing in the arm during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they didn't want to. And so they thought that the government law was overbearing and that they should have individual freedom to decide. And the government says, no, we have a public health issue, and therefore the public health issue overrides your individual freedom. So the truckers were like, F this, because they were going to deplatform their ability to ride the vehicles. They're going to take away their livelihoods, take away their license to operate their vehicles. So they got together and formed a massive protest, blocked the bridge that was going between the US and Canada from the Canadian side. And it lasted for like 4 or 5 days, maybe even a week. And the Canadian authorities came in and they froze the bank accounts of every trucker that participated and anybody online who's on social media who said they supported them. They just took their money. Now that's a response, a repressive response from a central authority. So if that happened in one instance with one group of people for one industry related to one issue, what do you think would happen if people tried to organize a nationwide general strike, a sit-in at all these different places throughout the arteries of commerce, and decided they weren't going to pay for anything or pay taxes? and it was like 500,000 people or a million, they'd crush it easily, right? They'd probably put people in jail. They'd probably make an example of some of them. They'd probably have some violence at some point if it got that way. Maybe there'd be some instigators from the government that got it to be violent, so it made people look bad. But let's say it was 30 million people. Well, that's a different animal. That's scale. And there's only so many people you can shoot at, imprison, make an example of before it's just too overwhelming, right? So the idea would be, and it's again difficult to do, theoretically, all that stuff, the need would be to organize at scale. Now, where does that number come up? What's the key? Where does the tipping point, right? That's the question. Well, how many? Well, historically, for these types of things, the average has been between 3.5% to 4% participation among the citizenry who's of age to do so. In this case, about 11, 12, 13 million working age Americans or so. Now, it may take more in this country for whatever reason, it may take less. But if you woke up tomorrow morning in a fictional movie, and let's say that you, your brother, your cousin, your mother, anybody who's of age has had it, and so therefore you've had decentralized town-based groups, and let's say your part of town is your little neighborhood, and the other part of town is there, and they have people that do it over there, and take that across the whole country, and everybody's got their little groups. It's no one person or no one leader. It's tens of thousands of people that are running their little groups. But they all have sort of a common goal and a common path and a common set of escalatory steps they're willing to take to get some common outcomes. And so imagine tomorrow you woke up and tried to go to work. And what if you couldn't get on the highway? Like the entrance was blocked, or stuck. And what if you tried to go to the store and you couldn't get there? And what if you tried to go to the train station? Couldn't get there. Tried to fly, couldn't get there. What would that do? That would just stop everything, right? And that would change everything, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen or even it should happen. I'm saying that that would be enough scale to make those few people that I told you earlier that don't really pay attention too much to the 500,000 protest or the social stuff. Like, who cares if people get equal rights to get a mortgage or drink from a water fountain? That doesn't affect their money. Who gives a shit? But you want to change the banking system? Look what happened to Saddam and Gaddafi. You're taking some of their profits at that point, right? That's enough to get them interested. And it did. Now you got these 5 major nations that are doing it. They can't go in and do their normal thing. They can't take the money from the truckers because they don't have access. They took some of it from Russia, but they can't just go in and slap them hard like they like to usually. They're kind of stuck in a weird spot where they have to deal with it. And that's what would have to happen for there to be a change. So you can go vote. I think we should go vote. In fact, I'm going to talk about somebody who I'm going to try to help get into the Senate this cycle. You're like, Jeff, you just said it doesn't matter. Yeah, you know what? Since I don't think either A or B is going to make a difference, I don't think B is going to happen. I don't think A is going to be a thing. But hey, I'd rather have one better person in an elected position, because what do they get to do? They get to speak. And being able to speak publicly in a forum where they're required to cover them, they're going to get a chance to spread the message that's most important for people to hear. Maybe it'll catch some steam. I don't know. It's like better than nothing, right? There's more of the same bought off morons who just want to do what they have to do to survive. They're not doing it for the people. They're doing it for their career. And they're not trying to push back against, listen, it's got to be hard if you're an elected official to not get caught up in that. I mean, even if you have the best of intentions, you have to deal with reality, right? You can say, well, I can go out with a flame and I can yell at everybody around me and then they're going to get my ass kicked out. Or I can try to get the 1 or 2 things done that the system will let me get done, and I can just have to ride with the rest. And I guess a lot of people fall into that mode, right? And you can get rich doing it, right? Let's face it, that comes in too. Somebody says, hey, I'll tell you what, you give me your vote on this and we'll make sure there's a nice job waiting for you when you come out on the other end, that kind of stuff. It's called the revolving door. Make sure this regulation doesn't pass, and wink, wink, there'll be a board seat for you. $800,000 a year, easy money. Hunter Biden, right? Over in Burisma in Ukraine, same kind of thing. And then 6 months later, you come back into a government job. Now you sit on the team that used to regulate it, because back and forth, back. That's the current system. And because of that, we're left on the other side of that, like as an afterthought, we the people. And the system was meant to serve the constituency, but now it just serves a whole bunch of other interests that has nothing to do with the initial intention of the system. And that's the problem. So I'm going to mention somebody's name because you all have your own path with this. Some people have mentioned Cornel West for president. Some people have mentioned, what's her name again? Claudia De La Cruz. And there's Cenk Uygur, Marianne Williamson, others that are independent candidates for the United States for the presidency. But we know from the past that unless you have party support and big money and a lot of things behind you, your chances of winning is like 1 in 10 trillion. Let's be honest, right? We've seen this for decades. So they're not going to win. But somebody who's running for Senate or running for House of Representatives could win, right? If they had the right kind of campaign and they could angle the right way with the voters, they could possibly get in. So in that light, there's somebody who I like. I'm guessing they're not perfect. No, none of us are perfect, but I don't think they can't be bought off. They're honest, smart, hardworking, good with people, care about people, and want to see some positive changes in the world that'll have a positive impact for more of us. Nothing's going to fix everything perfectly. And even in 1 term, even 5 terms of a Senate, which is 30 years, it's impossible by yourself to make major changes. You have to have alliances and you got to, the whole political process. But if we don't get 1 person, we're not going to get 2, right? So I'd rather have a Senate that had 1 better person who speaks for the people than 0, right? Then we can at least listen on the nightly news and hear somebody who's making some damn sense once in a while, rather than all the bullshit we hear, right? So in that end, there's somebody who I've been following fairly closely for a while. I like her. Her name is Diane Sare, S-A-R-E. And maybe I can pull up her picture or something like that. But she's an independent candidate she's running for senator from the same district or same Senate seat as Hillary Clinton held. And then Kirsten Gillibrand is the current senator. She's a Democrat from New York. And I don't know much about Kirsten personally, but I do know that her voting record reflects a lot of the same things that we're talking about. It's just, she's in that mix, right or wrong. She's in that path that is causing these problems to persist. And she hasn't been somebody with the courage or whatever you want to call it to step outside the lane and speak truth to power and basically let them have it. And I think this is the kind of person that will do that. And that means they'll probably only be a 1-term senator if they do get elected, which is unlikely. Let's face it. The Democratic Party goes out of its way to try to get rid of anybody and everybody who could possibly have any chance at chipping away at their favorite person. But it's better than nothing, right? I mean, what else are we going to do? Now, we can also be working, like I said, I think some of our energy can go towards supporting somebody. If you like this person, great. If you don't, no big deal. Maybe you have somebody else you want to go support. Great, I say go for it. But the question is, in the end, for each unit of energy we output towards an activity, and trying to get return on that investment, what's going to be the best chance? It could be that the return on investment from what I've talked about earlier is 0, because it's just too difficult and not enough people will do it, and the scale, that's possible. I don't know. But I do know that if we keep doing what we're doing right now and kind of little pieces here and there, other than the ability for them to speak out and create more awareness, which again is not the entirety of the puzzle, right? It's just nice to listen to somebody who's not saying the bullshit. Then we're probably going to keep going in a direction that's not good for the regular person. It just makes sense, right? Things are moving in a wrong way. Most people can't even afford a $500 expense right now where they're out of their house. That's not a good place to be. So, by the way, we've had a guest here for a while. So I've not been paying attention to comments either. So let's bring up Sumaya. I'll try to get caught up on comments. I get kind of, when people ask me these questions, it just takes an explanation of that link to really tell you what's going on. Are you there, Sumaya? I'll tell you what, I can't hear you. If you can hear me, please, what you probably want to do is exit the live, close TikTok, reopen TikTok, and then try to come back into the guest queue. Juliet, if you want to come up, you said you wanted to kind of rephrase it. That's fine. Yeah, please come on back up. I just invited you. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think it's difficult if you've grown up in a place that's obviously at the end of apartheid and you've got very varied kind of like, I think you can relate to that, but your mind kind of like gets mixed up and you try and like get like clarity. So I think what we need to do is kind of just make sure that what we're saying is pretty much
All right, I think you fell off, Juliet. What I'll do is, are you back or not?
yeah.
Okay, oh, sorry, I thought she fell off. Feel free to come back in. I'm going to give this next guest a chance to talk while you come back in. You went away for like 10 seconds, so I wasn't sure you're still with us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm the one who tell your country earlier the space got stone coming so that y'all can.
Hold on. I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but A, I'm not able to really understand you well, but B, you're so quiet and so sort of, I'm not really sure what you're trying to say. If you could maybe speak up a little bit and maybe put it in some semblance of order so you can pick up on what you're trying to lay down. Unless this is a joke or some type like that.
Yeah, I don't know what is Lynn trying to say?
I'm not sure. I want to give this person a chance to speak if they want to, but all I heard was man. I'm like, I can't follow what that is. So I've unmuted your microphone if you want to talk to us still or not. I'm not sure if you still want to talk.
Yeah.
What were you trying to say? I wasn't able to follow you. Okay, let's do this. Let's if you want to come back on in a bit once you gather yourself or whatever. Okay. Are you still there, Juliet? Did you want to finish what you were thinking of saying? Okay. This has the opposite of good flow right now, right? This is not what I would call flow. But anyway, if the person's here, if you're still in the chat, you can maybe type in a question or type in a comment, and I'll be happy to try to address it. But I had a little hard time following that. Anyway, I don't know. Sometimes I think people are messing with me. Like someone will send a guest here, like, okay, let's see if Chip can lose his cool. So there may be something about that, which is okay. All right, he's back, or she. I don't know if it's a he or a she. I'm not trying to be rude.
Yeah. I'm the one who leave the message to y'all that the planet have stone. It's me. Earlier.
You might want to leave a little space between you and your microphone because you can't hear what you're saying.
I'm the one who leave a message to. I don't know who is.
Okay, I apologize, but this is not. You said I'm the one who leave a message. I don't know who. I'm not sure what to do with that. So, if you want to come back into the chat and try to use characters to explain what you're trying to talk about, I'm happy to try to take it on. I just wasn't able to make heads or tails of it. I apologize.
Cool. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, Juliet, we keep losing you after you come back on. So here's what I want to do. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to take you out, take you down. The best thing to do when these things are having trouble connecting is to exit the live, exit TikTok, come back into TikTok, reconnect, go through the guest queue, and then we'll bring you back up. How would I respond to somebody who says age group leaders are billionaires who don't help Gaza? Well, I would say this. In terms of leadership, it's not unusual for people who are in charge of organizations of people, especially governments or groups of people who they tend to siphon money off the top for themselves. It's not at all unique to the leadership of the H group. It happens in the Palestinian Authority. Mahmoud Abbas is very wealthy. It happens in Ukraine. It happens in the United States. We just talked about it for the last 30 minutes. It happens everywhere. Now, do I think it's bad that it happens when money that could otherwise help large numbers of people go to the few who hoard it? Absolutely, that's horrible. And it's why I'm talking about these very issues now, because we have a cadre of a very small number of wealthy serial accumulators. I call them the sociopathic serial accumulators. And they're not just United States, but they're global. And all they do is they're predators. They try to take from other places, whether it be the treasury, using the military, getting inside of countries, saddling people with debt. They're not really concerned about who, what, where, when, and how gets hurt, as are the leaders of the age group. They want for themselves. And I'm sure that they fund things within their purview, within their causes, but most of it stays with them, and they're greedy. Let's face it. They're living in high-rise, nice places in Qatar, and they have plenty of money stashed away, and as does Abbas in the Palestinian Authority. And Netanyahu, to some extent, maybe not exaggerated, has the same thing. He's got corruption charges, and so does Joe Biden. If you don't know, he's supposedly been siphoning money off of his son's dealings in a Ukrainian gas company by the name of Burisma, where a lot of money was being paid by this gas company to try to put pressure to get rid of a prosecutor who was putting pressure on the gas company to, work within regulations where they'd been basically blowing them off for decades. And it would have cost them a lot of trouble legally and financially. And they were able to get Joe Biden to put pressure on Ukraine by withholding certain loan guarantees. So they'd fire this prosecutor and put somebody else in who Biden said was solid. And he disclosed this publicly. And on all the stuff where they found on Hunter Biden's equipment, the laptop, they said in WhatsApp messages that 10% goes to the big guy, meaning that 10% of all the money flowing through these various underhanded deals would go to Joe Biden, presumably. Now, how does Joe Biden have $38 million of residential real estate and other assets when he only made about $14 million throughout his entire career working for, if that, maybe $6 million working for the government? That's a good question, right? 10% goes to the big guy. So this stuff happens everywhere is what I'm trying to say. So is it unfortunate? Yes. Is it unexpected? No. But it doesn't change. Listen, I've heard this a lot as a counter argument that, well, if the H group you gave the money to their people, listen, if they gave every penny of the money they've absconded with from the people of Gaza, okay, first of all, it wouldn't make that big of a difference in the standard of living. When you have 2.3 million people, it's not going to change that much. You spread it out, it's not as big of a deal. It dilutes quickly. But secondly, it doesn't change the fact that there's an occupation. So even if they had more money, they would still want to push back against the fact that their brothers and sisters in the West Bank, even though there's a divide politically in the leadership structure, they still see themselves as a common people struggling for a common goal, which is a separate state with autonomy and dignity and self-determination. And if you're putting pressure on that and not allowing for that, there's going to be resistance from every place. And there's not as much in the PA. There is still some that happens on a smaller one-off, two-off basis, like the attack on the old woman in the car that ran over some people, or some stabbings and this, that, and the other. But it used to be people going into cafes and buses with strapped on things, and it would go off, and then people would get hurt that way. That they built a separation barrier, and they use very careful security now, and it hasn't happened. But it's to be expected that you're going to have resistance to occupation and blockade. These are acts of war. And you can't expect somebody who you're, putting your boot on their neck, as I like to say. And if you have 5 knives in their side, you take one out, good for you. There's still 4 and a boot. So as long as there's a boot and 4 knives, you're going to keep fighting. At least if you have any bit of courage and any bit of dignity, you're going to fight. Because you'd rather get knocked out standing up than be on your knees forever, right? That's what a lot of people from the Palestinian struggle have said over the decades. Especially, there's a great interview on 60 Minutes with one of the leaders in the late 70s, early 80s who was assassinated. And the interview is asking questions along these lines, and his answers are just spectacular. If you haven't seen it, I have it on my phone. I'll play it sometime. Someone says, remember they had to hijack a plane. Put it this way. I talk about our country a lot. For those of you who don't know, in the American Revolution, the war with which our country got its independence back in 1776, there was a British occupation of the colonies, which is the eastern seaboard of the now current United States. At that point, it was just North America. And so how did that play out? Well, the people that lived there, they weren't happy about the arrangements. There was administrative control, legal control, and financial control by the British over the local citizens who didn't have a say. You've heard the thing, no taxation without representation. They didn't have a representation in the government, and they wanted a say in the things that were affecting them. So what did they do? They started resisting. They threw tea in the harbor in Boston. When things get riled up and things started to get worse, they did horrible things. They were fighting the British in an unconventional war. A little, group of British soldiers would go by in a wagon. They'd jump out behind trees and they'd fire at them, and then they'd run away. And the Brits would say, "That's terrorism. You guys are cowards. You're not fighting us fair." That's what people do who don't have as much weaponry and power when they're trying to resist an occupier. And the Americans also did some pretty horrible things to the British families. Not so different than what we saw potentially on October 7th. It was October 7th-esque, and it was called T-word. But listen, if you're occupying somebody and subjecting them to oppression and extracting things from them or mistreating them or both, they're going to push back at some point. It should be expected. And to cry, "Oh my God, how could this have happened? How dare you do that to us? You started this." No, the British, by occupying the colonies, started it. And the patriots that fought back resisted it in different forms that the British found abhorrent. And most of us would, if we saw the results of them, be like, "Oh, that's horrible." But it's understandable within the broader context, right? And that's the point that gets lost in this conversation from the Israeli perspective, is they say this all started on 10/7. And that how dare the H group do this, and they have to be eradicated because, you're never going to get rid of the H group, because the H group isn't a group, it's an idea. It's a concept of resistance. You could unalive all 26,000 militant members of the H group right now. Just poof, they're gone. Guess what? You're going to have 100,000 more that are going to step in their place over time. You have to take away the thing that's causing the problem for the problem to go away. And if you resist the idea of trying to fix your own stuff because you just don't want to have to deal with giving anything, well, then you're going to get what you get. It's that simple. So I hope that makes sense. That's why I think it's such a difficult thing to have conversations with a lot of the people who are pro-Israel, because they just won't relent on that issue. They also won't relent on 1948. They claim that everybody left voluntarily, or the fact that there was Arab nations that attacked Israel, that whatever happened was just the fault of the nations who attacked, and it wasn't Israel's fault. They were defending themselves. Sound familiar? Defending themselves by doing what they're doing, right? So it's a stretch, right? A stretch of an argument. And the ultimate irony is, I always like to ask this question, and this is a humdinger, ready? Would you be okay with it if it was happening to your people? That's a great question to ask. Because it wasn't okay when it was happening to their people, because we have a historical example of it happening to their people in World War II. Now, of course, there aren't train tracks and extermination camps and those types of things, that excessive nature of a final solution. But there were interim steps that are remarkably similar in terms of the flavor and feel of how things are, how the behavior goes, the mindset, the mistreatment. And, you can ask somebody, ask them this: was the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, should that be condemned? Do you condemn the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? Ask them that. If they ever ask you to condemn the H group, do you condemn the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? Oh, it's different. No, it's an uprising. It's a resistance against occupation and oppression. No different. No different at all. Same exact variables. Hey, Jim, can I share about the Golan Heights? Saw it on TikTok that settlers from Europe talk about it. Well, yeah, the Golan Heights is an area of higher ground in southwest Syria that during the 1967 war, when the Israeli military moved across the desert, they occupied and took over and captured that high ground, which is strategic insofar as it took the strategic high ground away from the Syrians that overlook the northeastern portions of Israel. So therefore, it makes it much harder to defend your territory when somebody has a place from which they can attack you, so they took it over, so that they couldn't use that as a strategic location, as a firing base to attack Israel. And they've maintained it ever since 1967. And it, again, just like Resolution 242 covers the West Bank, it covers East Jerusalem, it covers the Gaza Strip, it covers the Golan Heights. Can I please ask that Warsaw Ghetto question and insist on an answer? To whom? I mean, I'm putting this out as, rhetorical questions, but in conversations, these are things you can say in return, like, okay, fair enough. If I condemn the H group, will you condemn the members who perpetrated the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? Because as a German, I'm very upset that your people dared resist what we were doing because we were doing what we wanted. It served our purposes. So how dare your people resist? How dare they think that they attacked us? They started this, right? It makes no sense. It's absurd. But it's all about from which vantage point you see it, right? From the British vantage point, the American patriots were terrorists, right? They were attacking them. They were doing horrible things to their family, their friends. They were fighting their troops unconventionally, and therefore they were like this little pesky, unconventional force of crazy people they called terrorists, right? But if you're an American and you want to be free from taxes and occupation, that's a freedom fighter. You're resisting the bad guys or the British. Well, in this case, the Israelis see themselves as the good guys, but they're the British. And therefore, if the pesky little person with less power fights back, they're the bad guys, they're the T-words. But in this case, they're just like the Americans in regards they're trying to fight to break up a bad situation for them. It's all the same. Can you speak about the 5 times that the Palestinians could have had their own state? Yeah, that's a fair point to ask. Okay. First of all, anybody who asks that question, I guarantee you, unless they're doing it just to have me say it, hasn't read any books by Norman Finkelstein and has not studied the specifics of the different, quote, peace agreements that were set forth in the various terms. They've heard stories about them. They've heard narratives placed around them, but they've never read them. They've never studied them in detail. Because even Israeli ex-prime ministers and ex-officials in the government have said every single time, under no circumstances would they, if they were on the Palestinian side, have accepted any of those deals. Now, why is that? It's been portrayed to the public that in some cases that the Israelis offered them, quote, all this land and all these extra places, and they still didn't want peace, right? That's the story we hear. But none of the offers excluded Israeli control in ongoing form. For example, economically, they didn't have independence. Militarily, they weren't allowed to raise their own forces or army, and Israel maintained control over much of what they did anyway in their territory. How can that be peace with dignity and autonomy? It's not a peace deal. It's a swap of land with controls forever, right? That's not a peace deal. So imagine if the British would say, okay, you can go out on Saturday nights, but that's it. I'm giving you a great deal. I'm letting you out on Saturdays. How dare you not accept that? How gracious of me to give you Saturdays out. What would you say to that? You're like, dude, fuck you. That's not a deal. Would you take that deal? No. Why would you want me to take that deal, right? So just for those of you who don't understand the details, either Google them, you can look them up, you can read through every single bit. There's all sorts of scholarly articles. Noam Chomsky has done all sorts of analysis, Norman Finkelstein, or read Norman's books. Norman goes through painstaking detail to argue every little nuance of what I just laid out in a very broad sense. And it's, just because somebody makes you an offer doesn't mean it's a good offer, right? I always like to say it this way. When I was a kid, if we had a piece of cake that was left from a birthday cake and both kids wanted the piece of cake, right? My mom would say, wait a second. Okay, kid number 1, here's the knife. You can cut the cake. And kid number 2, you can pick which piece you want. Now that's a pretty fair deal because if you're person number 1, you're going to try to cut the cake as close to the middle as you can because you don't know which piece they're going to pick, right? So you're going to try to make it a fair deal. But Israel, what they do is they take a little sliver off the end. They throw it outside for 6 weeks. It gets moldy and nasty. They bring it back in. They slap it on the side and say, hey, don't you want cake? What's wrong with you? I'm giving you a piece of cake. Don't you want it? You're like, no, I don't want that piece of shit cake. Who would want that? Oh, we're being so generous. We're offering you a deal here. I'm offering you cake. Why won't you take cake? What are you, violent? You don't want peace? Have some cake. That's not a good way to be. That's not what's called good faith negotiating, right? So the Israeli narrative is always one thing, and then you read about it and you learn the other. You're like, oh, damn, that doesn't make any sense anymore. Or now it makes total sense as to why they wouldn't do it, right? So I would, humbly suggest that somebody who's making those statements or claims or asking such questions, do the hard but necessary research to fill in the blanks. And when you do, you'll be like, damn. Also, if you don't know what's happening in the West Bank, if you hear these stories, you're not really clear why life is so tough. Why don't they just be peaceful, right? Life's not that bad. Go to the West Bank or watch a documentary on what happens in the West Bank. Because most people who say those sorts of things have no idea what goes on in the West Bank or Gaza for that matter. And like any other human being, once you realize the humanity of somebody else and you see what they're enduring, your perspective changes. So That's what's going to take. It's going to take us to connect on a human level and respect the other person and their desire for freedom, autonomy, and dignity. And then we're going to have peace. Until then, we're not going to have peace. And Palestinians are not going to stop struggling because A, they were living there, got pushed off of some land. You're trying to push them off of most or all of it, trying to mistreat them. And those things never work for peace, right? They will never be peaceful that way. And maybe that's the way it's going to be. Maybe the Israelis are never going to allow for it because Netanyahu, who's even said publicly, he's proud about the fact that he's done everything he could to prevent a two-state solution, right? That seems to be the goal, which is unfortunate. Anyway, it's about 10 o'clock. I'm trying to get some sleep nowadays, quite frankly. I've done a lot of extra lives. A couple of quick things, now if you came in later in this thing, I normally go from Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. here on TikTok Eastern time. And then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I go from 12 noon to 2 p.m. also Eastern time here on TikTok. And if you missed any part of this, which people come in and out and stuff like that, maybe you're like, I heard the end, that sounded good, but what else were you can check out the replay. TikTok records these. I download them usually right after the show, and then I upload them to my YouTube and to my Rumble channels. And if you haven't heard of Rumble, Rumble is a very similar site to YouTube. It's just owned by a different company, and it's a newer business, so it doesn't quite have the type of content. But the positive side of Rumble is that they rarely take things down, and they don't demonetize people for, issues that are, nonsensical, put it that way. Also, if you're curious to see some of my other social media, you can find the links to those two if you want to have a shortcut and not just have to search me out. I have a link tree in my bio. It just says Linktree Chip Barnes above my videos and stuff. So if you click on that, let me show you what's going to pop up. I'll show you this really quickly. If you click on this, I'll show you every step of the way here. So here's my bio, right? There's my videos. And then here's my profile right up here. And then there's my Linktree right there. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. If you live outside the country, you're not going to see that. I don't know why, but they don't put it there. So I've written it here. So you can see how it's spelled. If you want to launch the Linktree, you have to type that into a web browser and hit enter. And it'll pop up this. This is what you'll see when you first pop it up. So it shows you, this is the donation we talked about tonight to help the people in Gaza. Please donate if you can. Here's my TikTok backup. Then TikTok itself, because I put this on other websites. Instagram, Twitter, and then of course YouTube and Rumble. Let me show you the rest of it is on another page screen here. Oh man, I got to do this again. How do I find the pictures from? Where are the pictures? Hold on. I'm sorry, I have to do this again. I don't know why it does that. Here's the second half of that. So there's YouTube is right below that, YouTube and Rumble. And then of course, now we have these Telegram groups. These are groups that I create for different types of dialogue on different types of issues. So this app is called Telegram. It's a little messaging app that has groups. It's pretty cool. And then of course, if you like what I do and you want to help me do what I do, because I'd appreciate it, I have a Patreon account. And just, those of you who like coming to these lives, I love having you here. But I'm going to start moving many of them to different platforms. Because like anybody else in the world, you have bills you got to pay, and eventually you have to have a following or you can't make all this work. So I've been doing them for free for over 2 months, 6 days a week for 2 hours a piece, which I'm happy to do. I'll probably still do 1 or 2 a week for free. But most of my stuff's going to start moving elsewhere. So I hope you'll follow me on my YouTube and my Rumble and my Twitter, because most of my stuff's going to be shifting in the near future. But if you want to give a donation, either one time or whatever, you can see Venmo and Cash App and PayPal and stuff like that. The Patreon, you get early access to stuff. In about a week, I'm going to be uploading all of my videos early to Patreon people, including the live replays. And then they'll go on YouTube or Rumble when that time expires. So if you want to be able to see stuff like that, it's $5 a month. It's not that big of a deal. So that's pretty much my deal there. And then, let me get back to here. I wish I had a picture of Diane Sarah. I should have done that. Here's the actual fundraiser. If you click that first link at the top of my link tree, this is the group that's putting together Keep the People of Gaza Warm with Winter Clothes. And then you can just click the donate button. And you can see that they've raised over 300,000 pounds. They've raised 66,000 of the 300,000 pound goal. and they've gotten 4,100 donations so far. So this is established, it's legit. So if you can, please contribute, because they're nice people and they're doing nice work. So unless there's any other major questions, I always forget to say one thing. I'm trying to remember what that was, but I guess I can't. I think it's recordings. But I wanted to thank the moderators for here tonight. Thank you for doing the moderating, because I know that takes work. Here we go. I think I can get back here. Here we go. And for everybody who's been here, really enjoy it. And for those who came on, if I didn't understand you well, like I don't think I understood a couple people, if you can come back on later, maybe we can get it worked out. That sounds great. But thanks for being here, everybody. And again, I'm alive again tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern time. So hope to see you here. Have a great night.